That is Katie Hallett, the one with the Christmas jumper. But this is a video her mother has never been able to watch again, not since her daughter died, suddenly, unexpectedly, at the age of 20 from epilepsy.
Katie was probably one of the most caring people, and I'm not saying it because she's my daughter. We got the same impression from all of her friends and colleagues, and she was very, very caring. She was very lively and a big part of her peer group, and she had many, many friends, many friends.
Katie Hallett was training to be a children's nurse. That in itself is an important detail, because as it turns out, shift patterns or not enough sleep or stress are likely to have contributed to her death.
We were given no information whatsoever. In fact, when Katie was diagnosed with epilepsy, she was taken in to see the consultant without us. We were sat in the waiting room waiting for her, thinking that she'd been taken to be weighed. And in fact, the consultant had given her information about the medication that she was going to be given, which may affect her having a family later on in life.
What the consultant didn't tell her, or her family, was something far more critical, that there is a risk of what is called sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, or SUDEP. They were never told what to look out for. They were not given a chance to prevent Katie's death.
We sometimes think that other conditions or illnesses where there is a risk of death, I mean, there are some obvious ones, but people would go ahead and tell you about that. And
so you're talking asthma or diabetes?
Or cancers and what have you. So everyone is aware of the risks there. I'm absolutely certain that if we'd had the information available to us at what nearly 12 years ago now, then I'm absolutely certain that things could have been different. Not necessarily would have been, but could have been different.
Because the tragedy for families like Katie's is that 42% of deaths from SUDEP are thought to be preventable. There is, of course, a desperate need to do something about the number of sudden, unexpected deaths from epilepsy. And actually, here in Cornwall, they have managed to turn the tide. They've developed a simple checklist that both doctors and nurses and the patients themselves can use, looking at increased risk factors, and that can be anything from not getting enough sleep, to drinking too much alcohol, to feeling lonely. Here in this area, they have managed to more than halve the number of people dying from SUDEP. Throughout the UK, more than 1,000 people die from epilepsy every year, making it 10 times more risky than asthma. Where there is no obvious cause like suicide, then that is SUDEP, and it largely affects young people.
Okay.
The checklist, which Dr. Rohit Shankar helped develop, identifies subtle or not so subtle changes. For patients like Ruth Mallard, who has a genetic condition called Rett syndrome and can't speak for herself, it can help find a reason why her epileptic fits might be increasing.
If it's a change in weight, perhaps, or something else, is that causing it? Is it a change in something else? And you see that. And I mean, the staff keep a chart. And every episode, however big, however small, is recorded there and that sort of thing, and it all goes into the database and that sort of thing. And it works quite well, I think, actually. You know, we have been extremely lucky.
Official guidance is a patient considered at risk of death from epilepsy should be told. It doesn't often happen. The checklist, however, helps them identify and understand their own risks.
Well, you told me that your girlfriend's now left you, or you're alone at night and you got up with pain in your body and things. We are wondering whether you're having night seizures. Now we need that checked out. We are wondering whether you're still taking your medication, because you said that you blacked out after your last drink. So your night tablets, did it go in or not? So it allows me to point to what the person has narrated and feed that back to the individual.
And it allows you to say, your risk has now gone from down here to up here, and that's a risk of death.
The simple answer is yes. I know it can come across as scary, but I think it helps us to be a bit more blunter.
There's an app too, so patients can monitor themselves. Both this and the checklist are in fact Katie Hallett's legacy. A fund in her name helped pay for them to be developed. And yet, despite the dramatic reduction in deaths in Cornwall, across the country it remains patchy. Now there are calls for an inquiry, and tomorrow there's the launch of a campaign to prevent the 21 deaths from epilepsy every week.
It's a recurring disaster from the point of view of our community. And if these lessons were listened to, and if there was a little bit of support in the system, we could really speed up the change, speed up the conversations, and speed up the help that actually people are getting to live a good and long life.
There is a terrible what if for Katie's family. What if there'd been a checklist? She certainly had increased risk factors.
She was getting severe migraines, which she didn't normally have with her epilepsy. And the doctor who was on duty that evening actually laughed at us. And he said, "You are training to be a nurse, go home and take some paracetamol." And 48 hours later, Katie had died.